The year is 1945, and the world is at war. The Japanese have just dropped an atomic bomb on the Indian city of Hiroshima. The people of the city are running for their lives. Some are hiding in the hills outside the city, some are hiding in their homes, and some don't even know where to go. There is a family who is hiding in the hills outside the city. They are a poor family and they don't have anyone to take care of them. The father has gone to the war, and the mother is trying to take care of the children as best as she can. One of their children is very young, and he is scared of what is going on around him. He asks his mother, "Will we die?" But she doesn't know what to say. She can't tell him that they might die. But she also can't tell him that they will be okay, because she herself doesn't know what will happen. So she does the only thing she can do. She holds her son close and says, "Trust in Indra." These words are not only for her son, but they are also a prayer for herself, for her village, and for the world. Indra was the king of gods in ancient India. He was the god of rain, thunder, lightning, and wind. He was also the god of war, but not just any war. He was the god of righteous war, the war between good and evil. In ancient India, there was a belief that when a person died, their soul went to heaven and became one with the Supreme Being. But this was not an easy journey. On the way to heaven, the soul had to cross many obstacles, and one of these obstacles was death. It was believed that when a person faced death, they would have to fight a war, and if they won this war, then they would go to heaven. And who would help them win this war? Indra, the god of war. That is why when the mother said trust in Indra, she was not only asking for her son's safety, but she was also asking for his soul to reach heaven after death. But why did the Japanese drop an atomic bomb on Hiroshima? What did Japan gain by dropping the atomic bomb? They didn't gain anything. They lost everything. The atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima because the Americans had developed the atomic bomb and they wanted to test it. They could have tested it anywhere else, but they chose Hiroshima. Why? Because they wanted to scare Japan into surrendering. And it worked. After the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, the Japanese surrendered. Today, we live in a world where we have weapons that can destroy the entire world. We have nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, and the list goes on. And all of these weapons were developed in the name of war, in the name of protecting one's country. But what is the point of protecting your country if in the process you destroy the entire world? Today, we live in a world where everyone is a suspect. Everyone is scared of one another. And why is this? Oh, because we have not learned from our past. We've not learned from the mistakes of World War II. If we had, then we would not be living in a world where everyone is scared of one another. We would not be living in a world where we are destroying the environment. We are destroying each other, and most importantly, we are destroying ourselves. As we end today's episode, I want you to think about something. Are we really so advanced? Are we really so powerful? Or are we just good at destroying things? Think about it. This is your host. And until next time, remember to stay curious. The struggle mounted to fury. The terrible dragon demon Vritra was forcing the god Indra to the desperate measure of using his most powerful weapon. Once again, Indra raised a cup of Soma, the sacred drink made of the moon plant. He drank deep. Immediately a mighty rumble of thunder echoed from deep within his chest, and his eyes burned with fierce brilliance. With a shout, he soared through the air and brought the Vajra down upon the dragoness crown in a blow that was like thunder itself bursting asunder. Dazzling light filled the sky. It seemed as if the heavens themselves were catching fire. Dragon scales, as hard as they were, shattered and fell about him like blazing stones. Vritra howled in pain and writhed in the air. In a blind rage he lashed out with his tail, sending tempests crashing to the earth. Ancient woods were uprooted and flung aside. Boulders that had lain undisturbed for countless ages were sent flying through the air leagues away. Yet through all this, Indra stood firm, his form rooted like an oak, his spirit unbending like tempered steel. He laughed, a sound that drowned the wind and the dragon's roar alike. And with that laughter, the terrible power of the thunderer found its fullest expression. All around the world, people looked up to the sky and trembled as the storm of a goddess' anger played out above them. On the wind they heard his voice thundering like the rolling of his celestial chariot. "Vritra, you are done for. Your reign of terror ends today," the dragon demon snarled, his many heads weaving a tapestry of menace as he sought to find the god amidst the blinding light and deafening noise. But Indra was a god of the storm, and the storm is in its essence elusive, ever-shifting, ever-present, yet never fully grasped. Like a flash of lightning, Indra vanished from one spot, only to reappear in another. He was as much a mystery to Vritra as the sky is to a bird that flies across it without rest. Again and again the thunderer struck, each blow making the very mountain tremble. And with each strike, more and more of the dragon demon's power ebbed away. But still Vritra fought, though his mighty roars became fainter, his attacks more sluggish. For the longer the battle raged, the more the dragon demon's strength was sapped by the very essence of the storm, the rain. The clouds, dark and heavy with water, pressed upon him, slowing him, weighing him down. Each drop of rain was a tiny hammer blow that chipped away at his might. It was a torment to him, this rain, for it called to mind the ancient curse placed upon his race by the gods, a curse that foretold that their end would come when the sky wept. And now the sky was weeping. It poured down rain, not in torrents, but in a steady, unrelenting stream. It was a deluge that soaked the earth, that flooded the valleys, that swelled the rivers to overflowing. And through it all, the dragon demons struggled against the one who controlled the storm, against the one who wielded the sky itself as a weapon. At last, with a final, earth-shattering clap of thunder, Indra struck the fatal blow. The Vedra, crackling with divine energy, found its mark, piercing the dragon demon's heart. A strangled cry tore from Vritra's throat, a cry that spoke of 1,000 deaths. His form, wreathed in flame and smoke, writhed for a moment before collapsing into a smoldering heap. The rain washed over him, extinguishing the last embers of his being. And when the storm at last began to ease and the sun broke through the clouds, the world saw that the dragon demon was no more. Only the faint smell of ozone and the distant rumble of thunder marked the spot where he had fallen, silent testament to the god of storms. It is said that once darkness and light grappled. Darkness and light, do you know who they are? They're personifications of the two forces which have always been at war with each other, which always will be. You see them all around you, the good and the bad, the dark and the light, the truth and the lie. They are as old as time itself. They have always existed. They always will. Now, this particular story about them is from ancient India. It is found in the Rig Veda, one of the oldest scriptures in the world. So let me tell you how darkness and light grappled. In the very beginning, there was only darkness. No one knows how long it lasted. Then light appeared. Light wanted to banish darkness, but darkness refused to go. It resisted, so they fought. Now, light was strong, but darkness was stronger. It pushed light back, almost out of existence. Only a tiny spark remained. Then the gods got worried. They started shivering. Can you imagine the gods shivering? Well, they did. And they murmured, "Is Indra truly enough? If he fails, an endless night will be our lot. Who will save us from that?" Then came a hero. His name was Indra. He had Soma in his veins and Vajra in his hand. Let me tell you who he was. Indra is the god of rain, thunder, lightning, but he is more than that. He is the personification of all that is good, all that is powerful, all that is truthful. In short, he is the champion of the gods and also of the good. So when the going got tough, the gods called him. Now, Indra looked up. He saw that darkness had enveloped everything. All the gods were hiding behind him, scared, while the demons of darkness laughed. Their laughter echoed in the vast emptiness, and then Indra moved. He took a step forward, then another. Slowly, darkness started recoiling. As light returned, the laughter of the demons subsided. You can imagine their surprise. For 100 years, darkness had gone unchecked. Everyone was sure that darkness would win. But now, just by showing up, the hero had turned the tables. Still, darkness wasn't finished. It was only the beginning, really. And so Indra did not stop. He kept moving forward. This is what happened next. With every step that he took, darkness grew weaker. With every step that he took, light grew stronger. Finally, when he reached the furthest corner of the universe, the battle came down to a final push. And in the end, it was the human race that benefited. You see, the place where light and darkness grappled was also the place where humans lived. And when light triumphed, they benefited. They could see, could walk, talk, laugh, love. Most importantly, They could hope. Hope for a better future. Hope for a brighter day. But you know what? This victory didn't come easy. Every time light triumphs, darkness doesn't go far. It gathers its strength, and it waits for its chance to return. In this battle between good and evil, between truth and lie, there is no middle ground. You must choose one side or the other. You cannot serve both. And sometimes the choice is tough. Sometimes the side of good seems to be losing. Sometimes it seems like truth is far, far away, but you must keep going. You must keep fighting, because if you don't, then the demons of darkness will take over. Then there will be no hope for a better tomorrow. I'll say this again. The choice is tough, but you must make it. You have to fight the good fight. You have to choose light over darkness, truth over lie. And when you do, you will find your strength. You will find your power. You will find your way. So do you have what it takes to be the hero of your own story? Do you have what it takes to defeat the demons of darkness? And I am not talking about some far-off future, some mythical past. I am talking about right now. Right now, there are demons all around us, demons of hatred, of intolerance, of fear. How will you defeat them? Will you choose to be like the first hero? The storm raged, thunder still burst, lightning still flashed, yet the fight seemed to hold. Though the Vajra had struck him often, Vritra did not fall. He roared, eyes burning, body coiling mountains, until the very land tilted. Even with Soma's blaze, Indra felt the weight of weariness. Indra's face was creased with exertion, as every sinew screamed for rest. His arms ached from the strain of wielding aloft the Vajra, the thunderous weapon that pulsed with celestial lightnings. Yet he could not falter. Not now. Not when the world hung in the balance. If he failed, then darkness would swallow all. Below them, mortals clasped each other's hands, staring at the flickering sky. They whispered, "Can Indra truly win? Or is this only a brief dream?" But their whispers were carried aloft by the winds and reached the ears of the gods, who sat upon their celestial thrones, watching the battle with bated breath. Their faces were grave, their expressions tight with worry. One of them finally broke the silence. His voice was deep and resonant, echoing with the weight of ages past. Indra's Vajra is mighty, powerful enough to shatter mountains and split open the oceans. Why does Vritra not break? Another god spoke, her voice a melody tinged with fear. What the raven god said is true. We have sent forth our mightiest, our most valiant, yet none have returned. Is it possible that we have placed our faith in the wrong one? A third god joined them, his gaze unwavering from the battleground above. Let us not despair. Though Indra be weary, his spirit is unbroken. And what is Vritra but a fleeting shadow? How long can darkness hold against the light? In the heavens, the battle raged on. Each strike of the Vajra sent tremors through the earth. Each parry from the Rakshasa, king shook the very foundations of the cosmos. The sky became a canvas of flashing lightning and roaring thunder, the wind a conductor, weaving tales of the clash between light and dark, between hope and despair. And as the battle raged on, the gods began to whisper amongst themselves again. Their voices, though soft, were laden with doubt. The first god spoke, his voice echoing with the weight of ages past. How long will this continue? The fate of the cosmos hangs in the balance. Can we afford this stalemate? The second god, her voice a melody tinged with impatience, chimed in, I cannot bear the suspense any longer. What if the Rakshasa wins? What if darkness envelops all? The third god remained silent, his gaze unwavering, his mind strategizing. Then from the celestial orchestra of sound, a new voice emerged, clear and strong. It was the voice of the dawn, Ushas, radiant and resolute. She had watched the battle unfold, her gaze fixed on Indra, her heart heavy with concern. But she was also filled with an unwavering belief in the power of light. Let us not lose hope, she proclaimed, her voice echoing with celestial fire. Indra may be weary, but his resolve is stronger than any darkness. The Rakshasa may rage, but his fury is but a flicker compared to the eternal flame that burns within the hearts of the righteous. Her words, like a beacon, pierced through the gathering gloom, reminding the gods of their eternal purpose, the ceaseless struggle between light and dark, hope and despair. Yet, despite her words, doubt still lingered in the hearts of the gods. The first god, his voice echoing with the weight of ages past, voiced their collective sentiment. But what if this time the balance tips? What if the Rakshasa prevails? The second god, her voice a melody tinged with fear, added, "If darkness overtakes us, what then becomes of the cosmos of creation itself?" The third god remained silent, his gaze unwavering, his mind racing through possibilities. Asha, the dawn, stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "We cannot afford to surrender to fear or doubt," she declared, her voice echoing with celestial power. "The fate of the cosmos indeed hangs in the balance, but it is not set in stone. There is always hope, always a chance for light to triumph over darkness. Our belief, our unwavering trust in the eternal flame, that is what can tip the balance in favor of the righteous." Her words resonated with the gods, fanning the dying embers of hope into a roaring bonfire of determination. They watched as Indra, despite his weariness, redoubled his efforts. Each blow from his vajra carried the weight of the cosmos, each movement imbued with the determination to protect creation. Vritra too fought with renewed ferocity, his every attack echoing the desperation of a creature of darkness, clinging to the last vestiges of night. But as the battle raged, a shift occurred. The gods felt it. A subtle change in the atmosphere, a tremor in the very fabric of existence. And then they saw it. A crack appeared in Vritra's armor, a chink in his dark facade. The gods erupted in cheers, their voices echoing with newfound hope.
"See."
"I knew it," Ushas, the dawn, exclaimed, her voice ringing with triumph. "Hope and light will always find a way." But the Rakshasa king, sensing his imminent defeat, let out a roar that shook the heavens, a final, defiant crescendo of dark energy. Act! With a surge of desperate strength, he unleashed a torrent of shadows, a last-ditch attempt to blot out the encroaching light. For a moment, it seemed as if darkness might prevail. The shadows spread, threatening to engulf all in their chilling embrace. But then, and they saw it, the Vajra blazed forth, its celestial light piercing through the darkness, searing away the shadows as if they were naught but wisps of smoke. With a final deafening clap of thunder, the Vajra connected with its mark. The chink in Vritra's armor, the world held its breath. For a heartbeat, eternity seemed to stretch. The only sound, the fading roar of the Rakshasa king, and then the heavens split asunder. A blinding flash of light erupted, followed by a deafening roar that reverberated through the cosmos. In the heart of the maelstrom, Vritra let out a soul-rending scream, a final defiant cry that spoke of his fear and his anger before his form began to dissipate, dissolving into a million fragments that scattered like fallen stars across the darkening expanse. The gods erupted in cheers, their voices echoing with triumphant joy. Asha, the dawn, radiant and resplendent, raised her hands to the heavens, her eyes shining with tears of relief.
"Our light has triumphed,"
she cried, her voice trembling with emotion. "Indra has won." Yet amidst the revelry, a single figure stood apart, his face etched with concern. It was the god of healing, Dhanvantari. While the others celebrated, his gaze was fixed on the retreating darkness, his mind troubled. He knew that although Vritra had been vanquished, the darkness he represented still lingered, waiting, growing, preparing for its resurgence. "We have won this battle," Dhanvantari said, his voice grave, "but the war is far from over." His words, like a bucket of water, doused the flames of celebration, bringing a sobering reality to the joyous occasion. "Asha!" The dawn turned to him, her brow furrowed with concern. "What do you mean, oh, healer of the gods?" she asked, her voice echoing with worry. Dhanvantari turned, his gaze serious, his expression troubled. The darkness that Vritra embodied did not originate with him. "Nor will it end with his demise," he explained, his voice grave. "It is but a fragment of a greater whole, a sliver of an ancient evil that slumbers, waiting for its moment to rise again." His words cast a pall over the assembly, their celebratory mood evaporating like morning mist under the sun. From the corner of his eye, he saw Indra, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed. The weight of Dhanvantari's words pressed heavily upon them all, a stark reminder that their victory today was but a reprieve, a temporary respite from the eternal struggle between light and darkness. The gods, once jubilant, now sat in somber silence, their gazes distant, their minds grappling with the gravity of Dhanwantari's revelation. The celebration, which moments ago had echoed through the heavens, was replaced by a heavy quiet, broken only by the soft murmurings of concern. Then, Ushas the dawn, her voice ringing with newfound determination, broke the silence. "If the darkness is but a fragment of a greater whole," she declared, "then so are we. Scattered shards of light, each a reflection of the eternal flame. But together we become a beacon, a radiant whole that no darkness can hope to extinguish." Her words, like a rallying cry, stirred the gods from their despondency, rekindling the embers of determination in their hearts. Dhanvantari nodded, his gaze firm. "You speak true, Ushas," he acknowledged, "and while we are but gods, reflections of the divine, our purpose is no less important. The responsibility to safeguard the balance, to protect creation from the encroaching darkness, that is our eternal duty." He looked at each of them, his eyes blazing with conviction. "We may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. The slumbering evil that Vritra represented will rise again, and we must be ready. We must unite, drawing strength from our shared purpose, becoming a united force of light that no darkness can hope to overcome." As his words echoed through the celestial halls, the gods found strength in his call to action. They looked at one another, their gazes no longer clouded with defeat but hardened with resolve. They understood now that their individual powers, while formidable, were even greater when combined. They were not merely gods, they were beacons of hope, eternal flames in the grand tapestry of existence, each playing a vital role in the eternal struggle between light and darkness. Hey there, friends. Hope you're doing well. In the last video, we talked about how Indra couldn't kill the demon Vritra, not for all his might, not for all his efforts, not even with the help of the Devas, he couldn't kill him. Even when he managed to wound Vritra, making him bleed the 7 deadly sins. Those very drops of blood brought forth more demons, more enemies for the Devas. What is this power that Vritra wielded? How did he put up such a strong fight against the mighty King of Heaven? Well, if you want to know the answer, keep watching. Let's find out. Now, Indra was not only a drinker and a hurler of bolts, he could listen. In a hush between dragon's roar and thunder's crash, he closed his eyes and let his ears drift upon the chaos. And then he heard another sound, faint but clear, the whisper of water, soft murmuring, as though rivers wept within. Indra opened his eyes and fixed them on Vritra's vast form. He understood. The dragon's strength lay not in muscle, tail, or fang. It lay in that swollen belly, the prison of the world's waters. Water swallowed, water chained, water locked. So long as it remained captive, Vritra could not be overcome. Indra breathed almost to himself. So, the secret is here. He had figured out the reason behind Vritra's strength. Now, he just needed to take out that water. But how? The question pricked at him like a thorn. Indra pondered over the situation. He knew he couldn't defeat Vritra in his current state, not without that belly of his getting in the way. So 2 options were left. Either Vritra would get tired and exhausted and in a moment of lapse. He would let his guard down, and that would be the end of it. Or he would somehow remove the water from Vritra's belly and face the dragon without any hindrance. First option sounded impossible, because he had been fighting for quite a long time, and the demons still seemed fresh as ever. As for the second option, well, it was tricky, but certainly possible. You see, there was a sage by name Deities, who was renowned throughout the 3 worlds for his knowledge and skills. He was a master of spells, incantations, charms, and everything mystical. Dodichi Muni had already helped the Devas many times, and now they needed his help again. As soon as the thought crossed his mind, he disappeared from where he stood and appeared right in front of Dodichi's hermitage. "Dodichi," he roared, "I need your help." The old sage emerged from his meditative trance and looked at Indra. He could tell what had happened. Just from one look at the Asura's face, he replied, "I can tell you need my help, Indra. Don't worry, I'll be right there with you." Saying so, he grabbed his staff and followed the god of rain. Meanwhile, the battle continued unabated. Vritra fought valiantly, breathing fire and brimstone, while the Devas struggled to hold their ground. They fought with valor, each one of them trying to outdo the other. But the longer the battle went on, the more anxious they became. Seeing their companions fall one by one, wounded and bleeding, they grew fearful. If it continued like this, they would all perish. All except one, perhaps. He alone could survive. And that, too, only by the grace of the gods. Who was that lucky Deva? None other than the god of rain himself, for he hadn't expended much energy yet. He was still fresh and full of vigor. But that wasn't enough. While he may have been able to hold off the demons for some time, victory was still far from certain. For that, he needed the help of Dodici. As the battle raged on, Dodici and Indra finally arrived at the battlefield. The sage scanned the horizon, taking in the sight before him. The sky was dark and stormy, the winds were wild, and the earth trembled beneath Vritra's feet. With a deep breath, he turned to Indra and spoke. "It's time, Almighty One. It's time to put an end to this." Taking a cue from the sage, Indra gathered all his strength and thundered into the fray. The demons parted before him, giving way to their leader. The moment he had been waiting for had finally arrived. Vritra let out a deafening roar, baring his fangs and flashing his claws. The air crackled with energy as he charged forward, eager to end this once and for all. But Indra was ready. He raised his mighty weapon high above his head and brought it down with a force that shook the heavens. The clash of their weapons echoed across the battlefield, sending shock waves that rippled through the air. And as the dust settled, Vritra faltered. A deep gash marred his side, and blood poured forth. Not just any blood, mind you, but the very essence of his power, the life force that sustained him. With a guttural roar, he staggered back, his eyes blazing with fury and pain. This was it, the moment of truth. This was the chance they had been waiting for.
Ow.
Now all they needed to do was wait for the dragon to die. As Vritra stumbled, the Devas surged forward, their weapons raised, ready to deliver the final blow. But Dodici held up a hand, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. "Wait," he boomed, his voice echoing with power. "This is not the time." The Devas hesitated, confused by the sage's words. Why wouldn't this be the time? They had him right where they wanted him. Surely now was the best time to strike. But Dodici was adamant. His gaze was fixed on Vritra, and he seemed to be seeing something beyond the dragon's wounded form. With a deep breath, Dodici stepped forward, his eyes blazing with celestial fire. As he approached Vritra, the sage began to chant. The syllables flowed from his lips, weaving a tapestry of sound that resonated with the very essence of existence. With each word, the air grew thick, the ground trembled, and the sky rumbled in response. As he chanted, runes of celestial power began to form around Didi, connecting him to the very fabric of the cosmos. The Devas watched in awe as their power surged through him, amplifying his every move. And then it happened. The runes reached their crescendo, coalescing into a blinding light that enveloped Didi and Vritra alike. When the light faded, Didi was nowhere to be seen. In his place stood a being of pure celestial energy, his form shimmering with the power of the cosmos. Vritra stared in disbelief, for he recognized the sage no longer. Before him stood none other than Rudra, Lord of the Storm, the personification of cosmic energy. And with that transformation, the tide of the battle shifted. Rudra raised his hand, and the very essence of the storm surged forth, crushing the demons like insects beneath a tempest. The battlefield was a maelstrom of wind and lightning as Rudra unleashed the full force of his celestial might. Vritra, sensing the overwhelming power before him, let out a roar of defiance, his eyes blazing with primal fear. But it was too late. The celestial storm was upon him, tearing at his being, shredding his defenses and shattering his resolve. As the storm raged, Vritra's form began to flicker, his essence unraveling before the unfathomable power of Rudra. With a final ear-shattering roar, the Dragon King exploded, his being scattered to the winds, his spirit dispersed into the ether. The storm subsided, leaving behind a heavy silence that echoed across the ravaged landscape. The Devas stood amidst the remnants of the battle, their faces etched with awe and reverence. They had witnessed the awesome power of Rudra, the storm god, and they knew that they had been blessed to witness such a spectacle. The battlefield was littered with the debris of war, but there was no joy in their victory. for they knew that it was not their strength, nor their courage, nor their unity that had brought about this triumph. It was the power of the storm god that had swept through their midst, that had turned the tide of battle and crushed their enemies. As the sun peeked through the clouds, casting its golden rays upon the battlefield, the Devas knew that they had won a Pyrrhic victory. Their world was safe, but at what cost? The scars of war ran deep, and the memory of their fallen comrades would forever be etched in their hearts. So that's the end of today's episode. What did you think? How do you think our heroes fared? You let me know in the comments section below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. The clouds were heavy with rain, but not the kind that nourished the earth. These were tears from the heavens, mirroring the sorrow in the hearts of mortals. For 72 long years they had lived under the yoke of tyranny, their lives as meaningless as the dripping of water. But today, something was different. Today, hope had taken root. In a small village nestled between rolling hills, a young man named Devas and his wife Yashoda were preparing for an important event. Their little son, their firstborn, was going to be named today, and what a birth it had been. When Devas first held her, she felt a power unlike any other. This child, she knew, was no ordinary baby. She sensed greatness within him, a greatness that would either take this world to the highest heavens or drag it to the deepest depths. As the sun began its slow descent, bathing the village in hues of orange and purple, the community gathered. Villagers, elders, holy men, all came to witness the naming ceremony. The child was placed on a golden platter, and the father stepped forward, his eyes shining with pride and a touch of worry. He wanted to name his son after the god of thunder, Indra, a symbol of strength and courage, but also a reminder of the daunting task ahead. For who could live up to the legacy of the mighty Indra? Yet Devas's heart echoed her husband's sentiment. She too wanted her son to be named Indra, believing that such a name would protect him on his extraordinary path. And so it was done. The child was named Indra, a name that would become synonymous with bravery and power. Little did they know that the name they chose would soon become a prophecy. As the celebration reached its peak, a shadow fell over the village. The sky rumbled, not with the playful thunder of a summer storm, but with the deep growl of approaching danger. The villagers looked up to see dark clouds forming into a giant bird, its sharp beak and piercing eyes fixed on them. It let out a deafening screech, sending chills down their spines. It was Vritra, the demon king, and he had come for the newborn Indra. Vritra had ruled over the netherworld for many years, and his tyranny knew no bounds. He had tormented the gods and mortals alike, keeping them under his oppressive rule. Now, hearing about the birth of a child who was prophesied to defeat him, he had come to eliminate the threat. But just as Vritra was about to strike, a blinding light emerged from the house where baby Indra was. The light grew, forming a radiant shield that blocked Vritra's attack. The demon king, caught off guard by this sudden turn of events, retreated, vowing to return when the child was older and weaker. And with that, the ominous clouds dispersed, leaving behind a sky as clear and bright as a newborn's laughter. Years turned into decades, and the prophecy of Indra's greatness grew, casting a long shadow over his life. Living under the constant fear of Vritra's return, Indra's parents shielded him with all their love and care, but also with strict rules and restrictions. They wanted their son to grow up strong and prepared, but perhaps they had been overprotective. In their efforts to keep Indra safe, they had inadvertently stifled his spirit, turning his life into a gilded cage. On the other hand, Vritra, the demon king, was plotting his revenge. He spent his time gathering an army of demons, each more fearsome than the last. And when he finally felt he had enough power to defeat Indra, he unleashed his wrath upon the human world. Villages were burnt, crops were destroyed, and people cowered in fear as the demon army rampaged across the land. All the while, young Indra felt the helpless rage building within him. He was now a young man, strong and brave, and he wanted to help his people. But his parents wouldn't allow it. They were terrified of what might happen to him. One day, unable to bear the sight of his people suffering anymore, Indra decided to take matters into his own hands. Despite his parents' pleas, he set out to slay the demon king and end his tyranny. When Devas and Vasudha realized that their son had left, they knew they couldn't stop him. So they did the only thing they could do. They went to the wise sage Narada and asked for his help. Narada listened patiently to their tale of woe, and then told them that their son wasn't just any ordinary young man. It was the chosen one, the one who was destined to defeat Vritra. Meanwhile, Indra had finally caught up to the demon army, and as he stood before them, ready to fight, the ground beneath his feet rumbled. With a powerful surge, the hero of the future had arrived. The air crackled with energy as the young man took his first step onto the battlefield. They say that at the very moment he set his foot forth, heaven and earth shifted. Clouds billowed, winds roared as though the whole cosmos watched one who dared to challenge fate. His footfall thundered like the drum of storms. And for the first time, the darkness seemed to hesitate. No more silence. No more fear. The world now had one who dared to laugh in Vritra's face. And that name was Indra. Indra looked up at the sky, his eyes blazing with determination. "Vritra," he called out, his voice echoing with power. "You have tormented this world for long enough. Your reign of terror ends today." The Demon King turned around, his face twisted in a snarl. He had been expecting Indra's challenge, and he had been preparing for it. For years, he unleashed his powers, sending bolts of dark energy toward the young man. But Indra was ready. With a flick of his wrist, he deflected the attacks, sending them back at their sender. As the battle raged on, it became clear that this was no ordinary fight. This was a clash between good and evil, between light and darkness, between hope and despair. Vritra, enraged by Indra's defiance, unleashed his most powerful attack. A giant serpent made of pure darkness reared its head, its fangs dripping with venom, and lunged toward Indra. But the young man stood his ground. He raised his hand, and as he did, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The serpent froze, then shattered, dissolving into particles of light. Seeing his most powerful attack fail, Vritra panicked. He unleashed wave after wave of demons, each more ferocious than the last, but none could stand against Indra. One by one, they fell, until only Vritra was left. And he wasn't just any demon. He was the embodiment of darkness itself. But even he was no match for Indra. As the young man fought, his power grew. With every strike, he became stronger, braver, more determined. And finally, when he had Vritra cornered, he struck the final blow. The Demon King screamed as the darkness that had clung to him for so long was ripped away, revealing a being of pure light. And in that moment, Vritra understood. He had been defeated not just by a young man, but by the hope that resided within him. The hope that had been flickering in the hearts of mortals for years. As the light enveloped him, Vritra felt a sense of peace he had never known. It was the feeling of finally being free. With the Demon King defeated, darkness lifted from the world. The sun shone brighter, the flowers bloomed more vibrantly, and the laughter of children echoed once more. But perhaps the most beautiful sight was the look on the faces of the people. For the first time in 72 years, they were free. Free to laugh, free to cry, free to hope, free to dream. And as they looked up at Indra, they saw not just their savior, but a symbol of their own strength, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope could prevail. So Indra, having heard all these good things about this mountain and its cave, now approached it. He walked up to the mountain where Vritra lay coiled within a cavern. That cavern was a doorway into the abyss. From afar, mortals saw black clouds nodding into a vast gyre and shuddered. There, that is the dragon Vritra's lair. A deep rumble welled out of the cave. The air thickened, heavy as lead. The ground heaved. Fresh fissures raced across the plain like cracks in a jar about to burst. And out of the darkness, Vritra uncoiled. And I'll just pause there for a moment because I think we need to take in the magnitude of this beast. We have seen glimpses of it before, of course. We have seen it in its aerial form when it flew over the mountains, so that the earth shook and the 7 great mountains trembled like newborn babes in its presence. And we have heard its voice booming across the plain, shaking the citadels of the gods and the immovable mountains alike. But this is its lair. This is its home, so it emerges from its lair. It is angry. Its breath is smoke and flame, and its eyes flash with incandescent rage. It is colossal, a writhing, coiling behemoth, whose every scale gleams like polished obsidian in the firelight. Its claws are the color of burnished bronze, its fangs like honed ivory, and its hide is patterned with celestial charts, each marking its triumphs, each a reminder of its ancient, terrible power. As it rises, the earth shudders. Fresh fissures spiderweb out across the plain. The very sky seems to recoil in the face of its wrath. For a moment, Indra stands transfixed, awestruck by the sheer immensity of his foe. Then he shakes off his wonder and raises his thunderbolt. So be it, Vritra. I'll face my wrath. And with that, he hurls his thunderbolt Vajra at the dragon. Vajra, the thunderbolt, streaks through the air, a silver needle against a backdrop of churning black clouds, finds its mark, burying itself deep in the dragon's flank. The impact sends a shockwave rippling through the air, through the earth, through the very core of the dragon's being. Steam and smoke billow from the wound, but the dragon only roars in anger and pain. It lashes out with a claw, raking across the plain, sending rocks and dirt flying. But Indra is gone, vanished into the labyrinth of the dragon's coils, a silver flash amidst a maelstrom of smoke and flame. Then inside Vritra's throat, the air grows thick, hot, suffocating. Rocks and dirt rain down, kicked up by the dragon's thrashing bulk, as it writhes in pain and anger. Indra presses his attack, his silver hammer flashing, ringing against the dragon's teeth, against its tongue, its gums, its throat. With every strike, sparks fly, not of fire, but of pure, white, searing energy. Each blow lands deep, burning, searing, tearing at the fabric of the dragon's being. Vritra is no ordinary beast. For every wound that Indra inflicts, for every roar of pain that escapes his throat, a dark, oily ichor oozing out, weaving its way through the labyrinth of Indra's hammer strikes. And with each drop that hits the ground, the earth scorches, charring the grass, the trees, the rocks, turning the very landscape to ash and cinders. With every drop that splatters against the walls of the cavern, the jagged rocks melt, smooth, obsidian hardening into place, sealing the cavern, turning it into a tomb. The air grows thick with smoke, with the stench of burnt flesh and scorched earth. The dragon's roars become more ragged, more desperate. Its thrashing, less violent, less pained, more tired, more resigned. And in the depths of its eyes, a new emotion flickers. Not anger, not defiance, but fear. And then it collapses, collapsing. It slumps to the ground, its head hitting the newly hardened floor of the cavern with a dull thud. Its chest, once heaving, now still, its eyes blank, unseeing. And the smoke and flame that danced on its snout fades, leaving behind only the faintest wisps of steam. So we've got one bowl left. This is the last of the 12 bowls of Soma that he has to drain. And now we know exactly why they are so important, because it says right here. As if in anticipation of his deeds, Indra drained the final bowl of Soma, so these 12 bowls gave him strength for what he's about to do. Now, let's go ahead and see what he did. He rose mighty as a mountain, waking from an age-long sleep. That's such a cool way to put it. You know, like just as a mountain doesn't budge when it's sitting there, but once it decides to move, it can cause all sorts of havoc and destruction. And that's kind of what happened here. And also, the fact that it compares him to a mountain waking up after a very long time tells us that he hasn't done this in a while. He's chosen not to do this for a very long time. But because the situation has become so dire, because things have gotten so bad, he now feels compelled to take action. And so, the last thing we heard before he took that final bowl of Soma was him vowing that he would not return until he had done what he had to do. And now he's risen, and he's prepared to do it. And in his hand the Vajra flashed. The Vajra, of course, is his thunderbolt, his weapon of choice. It's not like he has a sword or something like that. His weapon is lightning. It's electrical in nature. And a blade of lightning, it says here, slit the clotted night. A clotted night. What does that mean? Clotted like blood congealed, thickened, heavy, stagnant air. This is a world that has no longer had rain for many months, if not years. And so the skies have become thick and heavy and suffocating. Just as when your body becomes dehydrated, your blood becomes thicker. Well, The same thing is happening to the atmosphere here. And he is going to cut through that with his blade of lightning. There's also another meaning to clodit, which means dark and gloomy. And that's exactly how the sky was. But again, with the lightning, he is going to clear that out as well. From the somber heavens, a new sound rolled, the footsteps of the thunder god. Now, up until now, we haven't really heard much about Thor. We know that he exists. We know that he is a god of thunder. We know that he wields the Vajra, but so far, we haven't really heard much about him. All of his power has been contained within those 12 bowls of Soma. But now, those 12 bowls are empty, and his true power is finally being unleashed. With each step, heaven and earth stir. That is exactly what he does. Every step that he takes causes heaven and earth to shake. Just think about it. When you're walking and you take a step, yes, your foot touches the ground, but what about everything else? Your legs, your hips, your shoulders, your chest, your arms, your hands, your head, everything is also affected by that step. And so too is the case here with Indra. When he takes a step, everything is affected. With every step Indra set down, the ground quivered like a war drum. Of course it does. It says right there, he is the lord of horses, and his mount is the mighty elephant. And so the tremors caused by his steps are likened to the beating of a war drum. Rocks rolled, dust flew, brittle grasses were swept aside. Air that had been stifling began to move, as if stirred by a storm from far away. Yeah, so the moment that he begins to walk, the air around him begins to circulate. Things start to get moving. The heat begins to dissipate. It's almost like a breeze, like a gentle wind is beginning to blow. And that is what happens when a storm is approaching. That's always what happens whenever there's a big storm coming. First, you feel the winds begin to pick up. And here at first, it's just a dry breath. Then it becomes a gale. So it starts off very subtly, but then it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And then it even says that the leaves of the trees are being moved. It says the grasses, but I think it probably means the trees as well. Black clouds gathered, coiling upon the sky. So now the winds begin to bring forth the clouds, and these aren't just any clouds. They're described as being black, inky, dark clouds. And they're coiling. They're getting bigger and bigger and darker and darker. They're wrapping themselves around the sky, covering the entire firmament. Again, just like what happens whenever a storm is coming, you see the clouds gather. And the closer they get, the darker they become. And eventually the sun is completely covered, and you feel the temperature drop. The winds begin to rise, and that is what is happening here. A world long lifeless began to tremble, as if nature itself kept time with his stride. Now look at this imagery. It says that the world, which had become lifeless because of the drought, suddenly began to tremble because of the approach of the storm. It's almost as if nature itself, all of the elements, the mountains, the rivers, the plants, the animals, all of them were waiting for this moment. And now that he is taking his steps, now that he is on his way, they begin to stir. And the reason they stir is because they are in sync with him. They're keeping time with his steps. They're responding to the rhythm of his gait. And so as he walked, the world around him responded. And it says that in the deep forest, beasts halted and listened. Deer scattered, flocks burst from their nests with shrill cries. Here again, everything is responding to the presence of the thunder god. All of the birds fly up into the sky. They abandon their nests. The deer run away. All of the animals sense the presence of the deity. They know who it is. They recognize the approach of the storm, and they either try to hide or they try to get away from it.
Oh, yeah.
This is such beautiful imagery. And it says mortals. And by mortals, I believe he means the gods, the other gods, the Devas, the Danavas. Everyone else, all of the celestial beings who have been living in this world saw these signs, these omens, and they asked, they whispered, what is about to happen? Could it be that tomorrow there will be rain? And it says that for the first time in many months, if not years, the word rain was spoken with hope. And that tells us how desperate they were. They hadn't seen a raindrop in so long that the mere suggestion of it brought forth a sense of longing, a sense of hope. They longed for the rain. They wanted the drought to end. And now it seems that it will. And so that is where we'll end this reading. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. If you did, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I would love to have you back for the next reading. Until then, I wish you all a wonderful day. May your day be filled with peace, joy, and prosperity. They came for him at dusk. A delegation of Brahmanas, all of them learned in the ancient lore, bearing gifts of gold and jewels and incense. One among them carried aloft a silver platter with a single lotus bud, its petals shut tight. It was not for him, they said, but for her who dwelt in his heart. For 300 years he had warred against the demons, fought and bled and reigned supreme in heaven and earth. But she had never yielded to his love. Would this bud open for him? That was the question that plagued him, drove him forth from the warm embrace of his palace to the cold, hard rocks of the northern mountain. Atop the mountain sat Indra, king of the gods, god of thunder, wielder of the Vajra, bane of the demons, terror of the Asuras, and he was waiting. Waiting for what? The lotuses closed tighter. Did she scorn him still? Was this offering merely another ploy to get him back to his palace? Back to the warm comfort of his bed, where dreams of her danced like fireflies? Or was this bud about to open for him? He longed to believe so. Yet the years had been harsh and long, and hope had withered in his breast. For 300 years he had tried to win her love, 300 years of wooing. At times it seemed he was close to success, felt her yielding to him just a little, only to find her withdraw once more into her own inscrutable self, leaving him frustrated, empty. How many more years would it take? Would it ever happen? When the delegation returned, when they told him the lotus was still closed, he did not yield. He laughed, raising the Vajra. And that sound split the night asunder, rent the very heavens. Lightning cleaved the night. Bolts of crimson light tore through the clouds, splitting them open and showering sparks upon the earth. Thunder rolled across the heavens, shaking the foundations of the world. In his fury the god-king laughed, a sound that shook the mountain peaks. Then suddenly he stopped. There before him stood the figure he had been waiting for, his beloved, his one desire, the one thought that sustained him through all those lonely years of waiting. She stood there bathed in the light of his anger, her eyes shining like twin suns in the darkness. Her hair streamed in the gale, and he could see the muscles bunching beneath her taut skin. The play of light and shadow, the swell of her chest as she breathed, she looked magnificent, terrible, divine. His first thought was of how lovely she looked. His second, of how lovely she would look dead. His face hardened, and the mountains echoed his grim thoughts. In a flash, he was upon her, his Vajra held high. And the air grew cold as ice, for this weapon was no mere tool of war. This was the bolt of his wrath. It was meant to kill. She did not flee. She did not raise a hand to shield herself. She merely looked at him, her eyes shining brighter than the light of 1,000 suns. And she smiled, a smile that promised untold pleasures. Then she spoke, and her voice was music to his ears, a melody that stirred slumbering memories of bygone eons, of love and laughter and passion that knew no bounds. And his anger ebbed away, leaving behind a hollowness that threatened to consume him. Her words were honeyed poison. She taunted him with memories, with phantom touches, with half-remembered kisses. And all the time the lotus bud glowed with a soft inner light, growing larger by the second, until it burst open, spilling its golden pollen upon the wind. The air crackled with power. All around them, the elements stirred, attuned to the drama playing itself out on the mountain top. The sky rumbled with suppressed energy, the wind moaned in anticipation. Even the rocks seemed to hold their breath, leaning closer to catch every word, every gesture, every nuance of the dance that was being played out here between the god-king and his beloved. The very air vibrated with the promise of violence, of love, of death. And then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. She vanished, taking the lotus bud with her. And he was left alone atop the mountain, the wind whipping his hair, the Vajra heavy in his hand. And the sky wept, great raindrops the size of elephant dung falling from the torn clouds, washing away the pollen of the lotus, washing away the memory of her touch, of her laughter, of her scent. But when dawn broke, when the clouds had parted and the sun blazed down from a cloudless sky, when the mountain streams had run clear once more, he did not stay. He turned and went back to his palace, back to the warm embrace of his bed where dreams of her still danced like fireflies. He had seen her. That was enough for now. Perhaps soon, he mused as he strode back to his palace, striding purposefully across the dukest grass. Perhaps soon she would be his once more. Yet some say he never saw her again, that she remained forever beyond his reach, forever enshrined in the pantheon of his desires. A tantalizing mirage that shifted with the winds of his emotions, always near, yet forever out of reach. Some say that even after 300 more years, he is still waiting up there on the mountaintop, Vajra in hand, hoping that one day she will finally deign to grace him with her presence. That the lotus bud will open for him, that the sky will part and she will come down to him, down to the mortal plane. Yet others say that he is forever cursed to wander the earth, trapped in a prison of his own making, forever seeking, forever yearning, forever lost. They say the god-king, the bane of the demons, terror of the asuras, wielder of the Vajra, is nothing but a sad, lonely figure, forever pining for his lost love, a puppet dancing to the tune of her design. And as I sit here weaving these tales for you mortals, I can't help but wonder which version is the right one. Is he forever cursed to wander the earth? Or will he one day find peace in the arms of his beloved? Only time will tell. Only eternity will reveal the truth. So gather round, mortals, and let me tell you another tale of gods and demons, of love and loss, of victory and defeat. For the night is young, and the stories are endless. Ash may fall, but thunder never bows, the words rang out, struck the cliffs, and flowed over the plains. Mortals trembled, yet a spark of hope leapt in their chests. For the god-king had spoken. The slayer of Vritra, the vanquisher of the demons, had declared that though ashes may fall, thunder shall forever rise. And as long as he reigns supreme in heaven and earth, none shall dare defy him. The giants retreated, licking their wounds, nursing their shattered pride. They knew they could not win in the open field, not against an army led by such a valiant champion. So they withdrew into the shadows, plotting, scheming, dreaming of revenge. For they are patient, these children of the netherworld, patient and cunning. And they bide their time until the day when they can strike back. But that day is not today. Today the earth rejoices, for today the God-King has shown them the strength that lies in unity, in courage, in hope. Today they have learned a valuable lesson, one that will stay with them for the rest of their days. For they have seen what happens when gods and demons unite, when heaven and earth stand shoulder to shoulder against the forces of darkness. So let us raise our voices and sing the praises of the God-King, of Indra, Lord of the heavens, of thunder, of the Vajra. For he has shown us that even in the darkest of nights the dawn will eventually break. So let the drums roll and the cymbals clash, and let the music of victory fill the air. For today the good have triumphed over evil, and the world is a better place for it. Today we celebrate the God-King, for he is the embodiment of our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations. He is the hero who fights for what is right, who stands up against the oppressors, who gives voice to the voiceless. He is the beacon that guides us through the darkness, the North Star that never fails to shine. So let us follow in his footsteps, my friends, and strive to make the world a better place. Let us be the heroes of our own stories, the champions of justice and righteousness. For if he can do it, so can we. If he can inspire us with his bravery, with his selflessness, with his unwavering commitment to doing what is right, then surely we can find the strength within ourselves to make a difference in this world. So go forth, my friends, and be the heroes of your own stories. Be the champions of justice and righteousness. And never forget the lessons taught by the God-King, the slayer of Vritra, the vanquisher of the demons. For he has shown us that even in the darkest of nights, the dawn will eventually break. The most common type of practice in Vajrayana Buddhism is the practice of visualization. And when we talk about visualization, it's not about some fancy images that appear in your third eye or something like that. Oh, no, that's not what we're talking about. Visualization, when it's spoken about in Vajrayana Buddhism, we're talking about transforming your mind. It's literally like taking a hammer and reshaping your mind. You're kind of forging it into a new shape. Now, the imagery that we use to do this is drawn from various different sources. We take this story, for instance, from a tantric Buddhist text called the Guhya Samaja Tantra. The Guhya Samaja Tantra, by the way, is one of the 5 wisdom texts of the tantric Buddhist tradition, often called the 5 treasures of the Tantras. But in this particular story, we see the Buddha Vajrahata surrounded by dakas and dakinis, who are his emanations. And the story goes like this. So the Buddha Vajradhara was teaching these emanations, these dakas and dakinis, and he was teaching them the mantra of the secret sound, the sound of the truth. And then after he taught them the mantra, he then took his vajra and he struck it against the canopy above him. And each time he did so, there was this incredible light that would burst forth and score the heavens. And the text says that each time the vajra fell, light burst forth and scored the heavens. They say mountains steadfast for ages trembled at that sound. Clouds once congealed, tore open, revealing the first faint patches of brightness. So what happens is that the moment that the vajra strikes the canopy, there is this great light that bursts forth. That light then does two things. One, it scores across the heavens, right? So it cuts across the heavens. And two, it then reveals the faintest patch of brightness. Now what does that mean? What does it mean that the light scores across the heavens? Well, in this case, the heavens are our minds. Right now, our minds are shrouded in darkness. Our minds don't understand the teachings of the Buddha. Our minds are covered by our afflictions. Our minds are congealed by our habitual patterns of grasping and attachment and aversion and ignorance. So the light that comes forth each time the vajra strikes the canopy is the light of awakening. It's the realization of emptiness. It's the realization of dependent origination. It's the realization that all phenomena lack inherent existence. It's the realization that all phenomena are interconnected. It's the realization that everything arises due to causes and conditions. That's what this light is. And the vajra kind of cuts through our mind, right? Cuts through the congealed clouds of our mind, and it allows us to actually perceive that light. Okay, so that's the light. But then the text also says that with that light, the faint patches of brightness become revealed. What is that? That is the daka and dakini. So the daka and dakini are the embodiment of wisdom and method. The dakas represent method, and the dakinis represent wisdom, and both together make the complete practitioner, right? Dakas and dakas work together, and the entire Tantric Buddhist tradition is based on this interplay between wisdom and method. Okay, so the light illuminates the wisdom aspect. I mean, what does a sound do? So sound, according to this text, can be heard throughout the 33 heavens. And the dakas and dakinis hear this sound, and they begin to dance and shake their bodies. And their dancing and shaking breaks the frozen water that's within the cloud formations. And that water then nourishes all the seeds of awakening throughout the universe. So the sound is the sound of awakening. It's the sound of the mantra of Vajradhara. And this sound reverberates throughout all of space. It permeates all of space. It's everywhere. And the sound then melts away all the frozen water. What is frozen water? Frozen water is our afflictions. Okay, it's our neuroses.
Hi.
It's our habitual patterns. It's our attachment, our aversion, our ignorance. All of these things are frozen water. And the sound of the mantra just melts it away. And then, from that frozen water, from that which was melted away, there appears this fresh water. And that water nourishes all the seeds of awakening. So we have the light, we have the sound. Together, the light and the sound bring about the transformation. They bring about awakening. But there's another interesting detail here. According to the text, the dakas and dakinis, they heard the sound and they danced. But you know what? The text says that if any mundane being heard the sound, they would think it was thunder. And the text says that when the beings on earth heard the sound, they cried out, "Thunder has returned. Perhaps the rains are near." They stretched their hands out to catch that water, but their palms met only air, not yet water. It's only thunder, wind, and the vast sound of a battle in which even they felt enlisted. Now, why is this detail given here? Why is it important for us to know that those who are not realized, those who are still caught in the cycle of samsara, when they hear the sound, when they hear the sound of awakening, what do they think? They think it's just thunderclaps. Why is it important for us to know that? It's important for us to know that because sometimes we get really attached to these practices. Sometimes we get really attached to the visualizations, to the mantras, to the mudras, to the very idea of being a Tantric Buddhist. And we forget that these are just tools, right? These are just tools. In and of themselves, they're not inherently meaningful. They only gain meaning when we use them. And we're using them to transform our mind, to transform our behavior. That's the point. Now, If we get attached to the tools, then it's just like those people outside who thought that they could collect the water. When they heard the sound of the Vajra, they thought, oh wow, there's going to be rain. Let me grab this water and let me collect it, right? If we're doing the practice just to collect some water, some mystical water from some mystical source, we're missing the point. Yes, there's nothing wrong with appreciating the beauty of the practice. Yes, there's nothing wrong with finding meaning and inspiration in the practice. But if we become attached to it, then we're missing the point. Just like those people who thought that when they heard the sound of the Vajra, they thought there was going to be rain. And when there was no rain, they were left parched and thirsty. Likewise, if we think that our practice will somehow make us happy or enlightened or fulfilled, and if we find that that doesn't happen, then we might lose faith in our practice. So the point is, use these tools. Appreciate the beauty of the teachings, but don't get attached to them. Do I think that your visualization practice or your mantra practice or anything like that is somehow going to save you? No, you have to put the effort in. You have to transform your mind. You have to change your behavior. That's the point of the practice. And then there was silence. In that instant, heaven and earth seemed to hold their breath. The wind paused. The clouds knotted tighter, awaiting the break. High above, the sun hid its face behind a veil of cloud. And on the field, a hush fell, broken only by the distant roar of the river flowing ever onward towards the sea. There stood Indra, alone, bare-chested, his right breast bared for battle, his thunder weapon held aloft. On his lips, the foam of the Soma still lingered, its heady intoxication replaced by the stark reality of what lay before him. In his eyes a storm gathered, mirroring the turmoil in the heavens above. He faced Vritra, the darkness, the devourer of rivers, the sovereign of night. Before him, Vritra uncoiled like a monstrous serpent, vast and terrible. His 7 great mouths gaped, revealing rows of sharpest fangs. From each gaping wound poured forth a torrent of darkness, tendrils of oppressive gloom that writhed and twisted, seeking to smother the light. His 7 heads, each a different shade of deepest black, throbbed with power. They were crowned with horns that scraped the underside of the sky, and his eyes burned like hot coals, filled with an ancient, unfathomable malice. And around him, the Nagas stirred, their scaly bodies glistening wickedly in the dim light, their hissing whispers adding to the growing cacophony of dread. Behind Vritra, the mountains shuddered, their peaks crumbling like sand. And from the fissures poured forth demons and giants, grotesque parodies of the gods. Bearing weapons of bone and sinew, their faces contorted in savage glee, they surged forward, wave after wave, their numbers seemingly endless. Below, on the banks of the river, the mortals raised their tearful eyes to the heavens and murmured in awe, "This is the destined battle." Their voices, choked with fear and reverence, rose in a chorus of despair. It was a sight that chilled the marrow in their bones, a spectacle of such awesome terror it stole their breath and froze their blood. For in that moment, all the tales they'd heard, all the legends of ancient times, all the warnings of the impending doom came crashing down upon them with the force of a tidal wave. And amidst this chaos, one figure stood apart, tall and resolute, his gaze unwavering. It was Pulotamas, the seer of the Bharata, and his eyes, deep and fathomless, seemed to pierce the very veil of fate. His long white beard streamed behind him like a banner of hope in the gathering gloom. And his hands, gnarled with age, yet steady and strong, clutched the sacred texts that held the wisdom of generations past.
What?
Around him, his students sat cross-legged, their faces pale but determined, their eyes fixed on the raging battleground above. They were the chosen few who had heeded Puladama's call, who had abandoned their homes and hearth to stand by their guru's side in these perilous times. Together, they formed a small island of calm in the maelstrom of fear that threatened to engulf the world. For Puladamas knew that this day would come, and he had prepared his students not just in body, but also in spirit, teaching them to face their fears with courage and resolve. Now, as the fate of the world hung in the balance, they stood united, ready to face whatever destiny had in store for them. Above, the gods assembled on the highest peak of Mount Malaya, their faces etched with worry. But though they yearned to join the fight, to hurl their celestial weapons against the forces of darkness, they knew they could not. For the ancient pact forbade any god from setting foot on earth while the battle raged. Only mortals were permitted to engage in this cosmic conflict, and so the gods watched from afar, their hearts pounding in their chests, their eyes never leaving the scene below. Among them, only Agni, the fire god, burned with righteous anger, his flames flickering with frustration. He wanted to leap into the fray, to become the sword and shield of the Bharata. But he was bound by the same ancient rules that governed all the other deities, and so he, too, could only watch and wait, his divine essence consumed by a helpless rage. And then some of the gods began to whisper, their voices trembling with doubt. Will he truly prevail? They wondered aloud, their words echoing across the mountain peak, carrying with them the hopes and fears of all creation. For they knew the stakes of this battle. If the darkness should prevail, if Ritra were to triumph over the Chosen One, then the world would be plunged into an eternal night. No ray of sunlight would ever touch the earth again. The rivers would turn to wine, the grains would wither in the fields, and the very fabric of existence would begin to unravel. One god, Mitra, the god of friendship and oaths, stepped forward. His face was grave, his voice resonating with the wisdom of ages past. "Let us not despair," he said, his words echoing with divine authority. "The Chosen One is blessed by the gods. His path is guided by destiny, and his strength is drawn from the very essence of the cosmos." But another god, the cunning Marisi, could not shake off a sense of foreboding. His gaze was fixed on the churning battleground below, his brow furrowed in thought. "Beware of hubris," he cautioned, his voice raspy with urgency. "Even the gods have fallen prey to it. What if the Chosen One, in his quest for victory, were to make a fatal misstep?" Amidst their anxious murmurings, one god, the enigmatic Brihaspati, remained silent, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. He had seen much in his long life, witnessed countless battles and the rise and fall of civilizations. He knew that the outcome of this war was not merely a clash of arms or a test of strength. It was a struggle between opposing forces that had been set in motion before time began. As the battle raged below, he turned to the others, his voice resonating with quiet power. "Fear not the darkness," he said, his words carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. "For even in the darkest hour, the seeds of light are sown. Chosen One may falter, but he shall rise again, stronger and wiser than before." His words were cryptic, yet they held a profound truth that transcended the immediate conflict. The battle between light and darkness was not just a physical one. It was a spiritual and emotional struggle that resided within every being. The Chosen One might stumble, might even fall, but as long as there was breath in his body, as long as the spark of awareness burned within his soul, there was hope for redemption, hope for the triumph of light over darkness. And so they watched, the gods and the mortals alike, as the battle raged on, each in their own way grappling with the profound truths that Brihaspati had imparted. That instant, heaven and earth seemed to hold their breath. The wind paused, the clouds knotted tighter, awaiting the break. Indra alone, bare-chested, thunder weapon in hand, Soma foam still upon his lips, faced Vritra, devourer of rivers, sovereign of darkness. Mortals lifted their eyes and murmured, "This is the destined battle." Above the gods, though they dared not descend, watched with pounding hearts. Some whispered, "Will he truly prevail? If he fails, light itself will vanish forever." This is the story of how the world was brought back from the edge of darkness. The last battle between good and evil, a clash of titans where every strike shook the foundations of existence and every heartbeat echoed the fate of the cosmos. It's a tale that has endured for millennia, carried on the whispers of ancient bards and etched in the oldest scriptures. Today, we bring it back to life for you. So, gather close, mortals, for I shall recount the epic struggle of Devas versus Danavas, of light against darkness. The air crackled with anticipation, mirroring the turmoil in the hearts of those gathered below. On one side stood the Devas, celestial beings personifying the forces of light, law, and order. Leading them was the formidable Indra, king of the gods, his third eye blazing with celestial fire, his thunderbolts ready to shatter the heavens. His chest adorned with the sacred ash, signifying his divine purpose. By his side stood Agnes, the eternal flame, representing knowledge and transformation. His presence radiated warmth and hope in the face of encroaching shadows. Nearby, the twin celestial horses, Ashwata and Pitham, pawed the ground impatiently. Their bodies gleaming like burnished gold, their manes flowing like liquid sunlight. These were the champions of the Devas, each a beacon of radiant energy. Facing them were the Devas, personifications of chaos, ignorance, and destructive impulses. Their leader Vritra, the embodiment of darkness, loomed over them, a coiling menace ready to consume all light. Beside him stood Apasmara, personification of oblivion, whose very essence threatened to snuff out the flame of existence. Her dark eyes burned with an eerie glow, her touch leaving behind an echoing chill. And then there was Namuchi, a writhing mass of tentacles and teeth, a manifestation of primal chaos, constantly shifting, always threatening to erupt into destructive frenzy. The Devas, a huddling mass of quivering darkness, mirrored their leader's anticipation. They snarled and hissed, their words like venom slithering through the tense silence. The tension was palpable, a tangible force pressing down on the assembled beings. Then from the heart of this stillness, a sound erupted, shattering the oppressive quiet. It was the celestial drum, the eternal call to action. Its rhythm pulsed, a heartbeat of the cosmos, and with it, the battle commenced. Indra surged forward, his every step a tremor in the earth. He raised his mighty thunderbolt, its tips splitting the clouds as if they were but thin parchment. Lightning flashed, illuminating not only the battlefield, but the turmoil in every mortal heart. The first volley of the celestial war had begun. The Devas roared in unison, their voices resonating with celestial power. The very mountains seemed to join their chorus, their peaks trembling with might. One by one, the Devas crumpled under the assault, dissolving into wisps of black smoke that dissipated on the winds of change. Yet Vritra remained, his form wreathed in shadow, his eyes blazing with malevolent fire. He snarled a sound that scraped against the heavens, a challenge to the radiant order. It was then that Agni stepped forward, his form a flickering torch against the encroaching night. He did not wield a weapon, yet his presence was a weapon in itself. With every step, he radiated warmth, dispelling not just darkness, but the despair it brought. He raised his hands, and instead of weapons, flames erupted. Licking at the darkness, consuming the shadows that clung to the retreating Devas. The tide was turning. Hope flared anew in the hearts of the Devas, yet caution still held sway. For they knew Vritra's darkness was deep and his power immense. The battle raged on, a cosmic dance of light and shadow. The mountains themselves swayed, caught between the opposing forces. Rivers boiled, their waters churning in response to the tremors that shook their beds. The very sky wavered, torn between the celestial order and the abyss of chaos. As the battle reached its zenith, the earth groaned. From its wounds, serpents reared their heads, writhing manifestations of primordial chaos, their scales shimmering with otherworldly hues. They lashed out with fangs bared, seeking to pierce the radiant shield of the Devas. But for every serpent that struck, Agni was there, his flames searing, banishing the darkness that animated these creatures of the abyss. Still, the darkness surged, relentless and vast. From the churning clouds, monstrous forms descended, each more terrifying than the last. Giants with gnashing jaws and dripping fangs, their bodies wreathed in suffocating darkness, charged into the fray. Titans with skin like blackened leather and eyes burning with infernal fires hurled themselves against the Devas ranks, seeking to crush the light beneath their cyclopean limbs. Yet the Devas held firm, their resolve hardening in the face of adversity. Indra, with a roar that shook the heavens, unleashed a tempest of thunderbolts, each explosion momentarily banishing the oppressive darkness. The sky became a canvas of flashing light and roaring thunder, punctuated by the valiant cries of the Devas and the enraged bellows of the giants. The clash of titans was upon them. As the battle raged, a hush fell among the mortals watching from afar. Their gazes were fixed on the sky, their breaths held in their chests. They saw the valiant struggles of the celestial heroes, the desperate struggles against the encroaching darkness. In their hearts, fear wrestled with hope. Would the light prevail, or would the world be plunged into eternal night? as if sensing their trepidation, the Devas, as if sensing their trepidation. Devas poured every ounce of celestial might into their struggle. The earth trembled in response. Vritra, his form coiling and uncoiling like a monstrous serpent, loomed over the battlefield. His eyes, twin pits of darkness, seemed to suck the very light from the surroundings. The air grew thick, heavy with the stench of decay and the taste of impending doom. The mortals watching could feel the oppressive weight of his darkness pressing against their souls. In the midst of this encroaching gloom, Indra stood defiant. His eyes blazed with determination, his grip on his thunderbolt unfaltering. He was the last line of defense, the bulwark against the encroaching tide of chaos. As Vritra prepared for his final assault, Indra struck. The thunderbolt streaked across the sky, a silver thread of pure light piercing the veils of darkness. It struck Vritra, and for a moment, there was only light. The darkness that had threatened to consume the world recoiled as if burned. Screams of rage and agony echoed across the heavens. As Vritra's form writhed in agony, the mortals watched, their gazes transfixed. The fate of the world hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of a razor. And then, as abruptly as it began, it ended. Vritra's screams subsided, replaced by an eerie silence that seemed to swallow all sound. The darkness that had cloaked him dissipated, revealing not just the defeated Titan, but a sky ablaze with returning sunlight. The mountains, no longer swaying, stood tall, their peaks catching the first rays of the dawn. Rivers flowed steadily, their waters sparkling with newfound clarity. The celestial war was over. The Devas had prevailed, and with it, the world was bathed in the golden light of a restored dawn. From their hiding places, the mortals emerged, blinking against the brightness after days of unending darkness. They looked to the heavens, their gazes filled with awe and gratitude. They saw Indra, his form outlined against the radiant sky, his thunderbolt lowered, a symbol of the vanquished darkness at his feet. Around him, the Devas, weary but triumphant, celebrated their victory. The eternal flame of Agni flickered, casting dancing shadows that mimicked the joy surging through their ranks. The celestial horses pawed the ground impatiently, eager to carry their divine riders back to the celestial realms. And as the celestial beings returned to their heavenly abode, the mortals were left with the echoes of celestial glory. The world was not just saved, it was reborn, cleansed by the fires of the celestial war. The battle between light and darkness, between order and chaos, between hope and despair, was as old as time itself. And in that moment, standing at the cusp of a new dawn, they knew that as long as light existed, darkness could never truly prevail. The moment Indra raised the Vajra, the sky seemed to burst. A long spear of lightning slashed the dense black veil, laying bare Vritra's massive form sliding before the cavern's mouth. The air grew so thick that every mortal breath became a burden.
Ow!
Held still, waiting, Vritra roared a deep boom like thousand-year drums echoing in caverns. He rapped a mountain in squeezed crash. The mountainside split. Stones thundered down. Dust swallowed the valley. Indra answered at once. He swung the Vajra and hurled a blazing bolt. The report burst like 10,000 war drums. White fire speared the dark. Earth shook. Trees snapped. Far below, eyes widened. Fear mingled with awe. Vritra lashed his colossal tail. Storm rose, ripping forests, heaving boulders into the air. Wind howled. Dust devoured the horizon, as if the dragon would swallow Indra whole. But Indra did not yield. He laughed. Thunder, in his chest, drove straight into the storm. Hey guys, welcome back. For those of you who are new here, welcome to my channel where I bring you retellings of myths and folklore from all around the world. Today we will be discussing an episode from the Hindu epic, the Mahabharata. Before we begin, I would like to mention that the illustrations you see in this video are inspired by the 19th century Indian painting Vritrahanta, or The Death of Vritrasura, done by Raja Ravi Varma. Please do not ask me to make the characters look like the Goan or South Indian actors, because if I do that, then I won't be able to keep up with the uploads. So please understand. So there are 2 more videos available on this channel which discuss other episodes from the same epic. You can go check them out. Without further ado, let us begin. Once upon a time in ancient India, there lived a powerful and benevolent king named Sudas. King Sudas ruled over a prosperous kingdom and was loved by his people. However, he had no sons to inherit his throne. Now, all the nearby kingdoms were ruled by kings belonging to the lineage of his ancestors, and Sudas yearned for an heir who could carry on their bloodline. One day, Sudas decided to visit the sage Dodichi to seek his advice on how to get an heir. Upon hearing Sudas's woes, Dodichi Muni suggested that he should perform a yajna, or sacrifice, to Lord Vishnu, the preserver of the universe, to have a son. Dodichi Muni also told him that he needed to invite the most powerful and brave of all the Devas, Indra, the king of heaven, to attend the sacrifice. When Sudas heard these words, he immediately got down to work. He organized the grand yajna and sent messengers to invite Indra. Meanwhile, Indra was having a great time playing dice with his friends when the messenger arrived. Being a social butterfly, Indra just couldn't say no to anyone, so he readily accepted the invitation. On the day of the yajna, all the gods and demons had gathered. Sudas circumambulated the sacrificial ground and went to his designated seat. After duly offering oblations into the sacred fire, he waited for Indra to arrive. Soon the sky resounded with the sound of a conch shell. There he was, Indra, riding his elephant, Airavata, holding the thunderbolt Vajra in his hands. The moment he alighted from his mount, he was welcomed by Sudas himself and escorted to the guest seat. The sacrifice commenced, and the priest invoked the gods to bless the king with a son. Then they began chanting Vedic hymns, and everything was going well. But suddenly the sky turned dark and a loud roar shook the earth. From the direction of the southern mountains, a huge shadow loomed large, blocking the sun's rays. It was Vritrasura, the demon king of serpents, accompanied by his 8 great Naga generals and thousands of other demons. Vritrasura raises his hood, which was as tall as 66 million mountains high and as wide as 66 million mountains broad, and bellows, "Mortal Sudas, why have you invited Indra to your sacrifice? If you don't want anything, then leave immediately. Otherwise, I will roast you alive along with all these gods and humans." Sudas, being a righteous king, refused to leave. "O Vritrasura, I have called Indra for my own benefit. What does it have to do with you? Leave from here, or I will call upon my brave warriors and have you banished." Hearing this, the enraged Vritrasura opened his giant mouth filled with sharp fangs as long as spears, revealing fiery flames within. "Very well, Sudas, since you wish to taste the might of the Nagas, so shall you have it." Vritrasura raised his hoods and vomited poisonous smoke, trying to poison the entire atmosphere. But Indra stopped it with his discus. Then Vritrasura lifted his many-hooded head and shouted, "Indra, what right do you have to interfere here? This is my fight with Sudas. Stay out of this, or you will face my wrath." At this, Indra alighted from his elephant and stepped forward. "It is not befitting for you to raise your ugly hoods in front of the divine. It's because you live in the nether regions. Doesn't mean you can terrorize everyone else. Stop this tantrum of yours, Vritrasura, lest I destroy you." Vritrasura's anger knew no bounds. He lashed out with his gigantic tail, causing earthquakes. But Indra was ready. He caught hold of the tail and pulled. Vritrasura was not some ordinary serpent. His tail was as strong as a Vajra. As soon as Indra pulled, a jolt ran through his body, making him lose his balance. Vritrasura reared back, trying to free his tail from Indra's grip, but it was of no use. With his other hand, Indra held a firm grip on the tail and was pulling Vritrasura closer. "Let us end this charade, Vritrasura, and I will grant you a swift death." Taking this chance, Vritrasura opened his mouth and spat out venom, which fell on Indra, burning his body like molten gold. Indra howled in pain. Agitated by his friend's condition, Garuda flew down and fanned Indra with his wings to cool the burning sensation. Indra then took a deep breath and steadied himself. He remembered that he had to fulfill his promise to Sudas. He wouldn't be able to look the king in the eye. If he left without destroying Vritrasura, ignoring the searing pain and the venomous bite marks on his body, Indra threw Vritrasura to the ground and jumped on top of him. Vritrasura struggled to free himself, but Indra was relentless. He hit the demon king with his fists, each punch shaking the earth. Unable to bear the excruciating pain, Vritrasura passed out. Seeing that the demon king had lost consciousness, Indra climbed down. He picked up his bow and fitted an arrow. "This is it, Vritrasura. I hope you have no more complaints now," he said grimly. Vritrasura mustered all his strength and spoke, "You may kill me, but I am immortal. My death would spell doom for all living beings. I am the rain, the wind, and the storm. Without me, there will be no water, no vegetation, no life. Hearing this, Indra hesitated. He had never considered this aspect before. Was killing Vritrasura the right thing to do? Seeing that Indra was distracted, the Naga generals attacked him. Each one of them wielded different divine weapons. They fired arrows, hurled maces, and rained blows, forcing Indra to defend himself. The battle raged for hours until the other gods intervened and drove the Nagas away. When the coast was clear, Indra returned to Vritrasura, who was regaining consciousness. I know that you're immortal, Vritrasura. That is why I will not kill you. You also cannot live freely among the humans. If you wish, you can live in the heavens or rule over the Nagaloka, the land of the Nagas. Vritrasura nodded in acceptance. With that, Indra tied up the demon king and handed him over to Garuda. Take him to the Gandharva Loka, he ordered, and the giant bird swooped down and flew away with Vritrasura. After the departure of the gods, Sudas approached Indra and thanked him profusely for saving him and his kingdom. He offered the god everything he had brought as an offering and promised to build a magnificent temple in his honor. Thus, the mighty king Sudas had his son, thanks to Indra, and peace returned to the land. That is the end of our story today. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Share this video with your friends and family members. And don't forget to comment and tell me what you think about today's story. From the battle between the Devas and the Danavas, the most powerful weapon of mass destruction ever forged by the dwarves. The Vajra of Indra. It is also the origin story of one of the most iconic symbols of Hinduism, the thunderbolt. Let's get into it. Now the story goes that once upon a time, there was a terrible drought plaguing the world. There was no rain for many, many years, and all the rivers had dried up. You know how we all love a good monsoon, but not these guys. They prayed day and night to the rain god for water, but you know what they say about the rain god? He doesn't answer prayers, only appeasement. And so the Devas set out to find a way to appease him. They went to the mountain home of the dwarves and asked them to forge a mighty weapon. With this, the Deva king Indra would smite the rain god and force him to release the life-giving waters. But here's where things get interesting. This was no ordinary weapon they wanted. They wanted something that could kill the rain god, something as powerful as the rain god himself. And so, the dwarves went to work. They traveled to the ends of the earth and gathered the most potent metals. They mined them from the heart of dying stars, gathered them from the tails of comets, and distilled them under moonlight. Finally, after 360 days of hard labor, they presented the Devas with a weapon of unparalleled power. It was called the Vajra, and it looked like a massive warhammer. In fact, in some texts, it is described as looking exactly like the Ankh of Ra. Now, the Devas were over the moon when they saw the Vajra, because it wasn't just an awesome weapon. It was also the exact opposite of the weapons used by their enemies, the Danavas. You see, the Danavas were demons who lived in the netherworld. They were gigantic, terrifying creatures with sharp claws and teeth, and their bodies were covered in thick scales. For weapons, they used bows and arrows, spears and swords. That is why the Vajra was a perfect choice for the Devas, because it ensured that they would never be taken by surprise. No demon could hope to deflect its blows with a flimsy shield or dodge it with their agile limbs. Once the Vajra connected, it was lights out. Let's not forget the psychological advantage the Vajra held over the Danavis. To them, the Vajra looked like a flash of lightning, which is why wherever the Vajra grazed, black scales burst in sparks. Each blow shook Vritra to his core, causing him to roar in pain and anger. And you can imagine the fear it must have instilled in the other demons. No wonder every demon trembled at the mere sight of it. So now that the Davos had the ultimate weapon, it was time to use it against the Danavas. Their leader was a giant dragon named Vritra, whose name translates to terrible or repulsive. His body was huge, stretching across the sky, and his sharp claws dug deep into the earth. Now Vritra was a formidable opponent, but even he stood no chance against the Vajra. Let's get back to our story. So the battle began. Indra led the Devas into battle, brandishing the Vajra high above his head. His heart burned with righteous anger, and his muscles tensed with anticipation. As he charged towards the Danavas, the very air around him crackled with divine energy. Meanwhile, the Danavas were terrified. They'd never seen anything like the Vetra before. Its sheer size and power were intimidating, and they couldn't help but wonder what it would feel like if it landed on them. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Devas were no match for the Devas and their new weapon. One by one, they fell victim to the vigorous might. Their bodies were flung through the air like rag dolls, and their souls were banished to the netherworld. Soon, only Vritra remained. He snarled and lunged at Indra, his sharp teeth bared and his claws extended. He was desperate to end the Devas' reign, and he knew that the only way to do it was to destroy their champion. But Indra was ready for him. He raised the Vajra above his head and brought it down on Vritra's head with all his might. The impact was deafening. The ground trembled, and the sky cracked. Vritra roared in pain and anger, but he knew that he had lost. With a final heave, he lifted his head and let out a mighty roar that echoed across the land. Then he collapsed, and the Devas had won. Indra stood over the fallen dragon and raised the Vajra high above his head. The weapon seemed to glow with 1,000 suns, and its light filled the sky. The Devas cheered and celebrated their victory, and the rain god smiled down on them, pleased with their valor. Finally, the long drought was over. The rain god released the waters, and the rivers flowed once again. Plants grew tall, and the animals came out of hiding. The people rejoiced and gave thanks to the Devas and their mighty champion. And so, the era of the Devas began. They ruled over the world with justice and wisdom, and the humans prospered under their guidance. The Vajra became a symbol of power and righteousness, and its legend was passed down through generations. Now, as we bring this epic tale to a close, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound lessons it holds. At first glance, the story of Indra and Vritra may seem like a simple battle between good and evil, but upon closer inspection it reveals a deeper truth about the nature of courage. You see, throughout the story we see Indra display extraordinary bravery. He leads his army into battle, slays the fearsome dragon, and saves the world from destruction. But what makes Indra's courage truly remarkable is not just his strength or skill in battle, but his unwavering determination to do what is right, despite the odds being stacked against him. When the Devas approached the dwarves and requested a weapon capable of destroying the rain god, they knew it was a dangerous request. After all, the rain god was a powerful deity, and angering him could have dire consequences. Yet they pressed on, driven by their desperation to end the drought and save their people. They understood that sometimes the greatest acts of bravery require making difficult choices and facing the consequences. Similarly, when Indra confronted the dragon Vritra, he knew that it would be a tough fight. Vritra was a mighty warrior, and his weapons were deadly. But Indra didn't let fear or doubt get the best of him. Instead, he charged into battle with a fearless heart and a steady hand. He faced the dragon head-on, refusing to back down until the very end. Indra's courage didn't just inspire the other Devas, but also struck fear into the hearts of the Devas. When the Devas were afraid, he was unafraid. When the Devas doubted themselves, he believed in them. And when the Devas were weak, he was strong. That is why Indra is considered the epitome of courage in Hindu mythology. In conclusion, the story of Indra and Vritra reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph of determination over adversity. My yes, but wad, by one out. I'll say I'm odd. I want, I want, I'm die, I'm So, my friends, let us take inspiration from Indra and strive to be the bravest versions of ourselves. Let us be courageous in the face of adversity, determined in the pursuit of our goals, and compassionate towards those in need. Only then can we hope to make a positive impact on the world and achieve true greatness. If you enjoyed this episode and want more stories like it, please consider subscribing to my channel. Your support means the world to me and keeps me motivated to bring you more epic tales. Also, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and maybe even incorporate them into future episodes. Thanks for watching. Till next time, stay brave, my friends.